Hello there, and welcome to today's video in which I'm talking about forgiving ourselves for all of the embarrassing or cringe stuff that we've inevitably been through as autistic people. And I think as part of the process of getting a diagnosis of autism or coming to realise that we're autistic, we have to revisit so many memories, don't we? And this in itself can be really traumatic because a lot of it is really embarrassing stuff. And I know for me, I've been through so many embarrassing situations as an autistic child and as a young autistic adult. Some of them are excruciating to even think about, but this, of course, is a PTSD response. It's very normal to feel this way about memories that we find traumatic. And some of them can stop you in your tracks completely. Sometimes a memory will just pop up out of nowhere for me, and it's all consuming, and then it causes me to ruminate on it for so long, and it's deeply unpleasant. However, in recent years, I've been able to develop some strategies in order to try and deal with these kinds of memories whenever they present themselves. And essentially, it's all about empathy. So, what I tend to do now is to observe the memory or whatever it is my brain is trying to tell me or present in the moment, instead of feeling it. So, it's almost like I'm kind of a step back from it. So I'll just allow this thought or whatever it is to come in, but instead of feeling all consumed in the horribleness of whatever it is, I'll acknowledge that it's there, but almost from another person's perspective. So it's not me looking at and feeling terrible about whatever this memory is. I'll remove myself and try and analyse it like another person would, and it really does offer me some relief and release in doing this. So I'll always offer empathy as I would another person if they were offloading to me, and I'll tell myself, you were and are autistic. And if it's a memory from when I was younger, I was a child or young adult. I was somebody who had a really difficult childhood. And because of my differences, I was bullied at school and in various jobs. And very often I just didn't understand social rules. So I constantly lived in fear of messing up again. So that in itself would make life difficult. So in essence, the memory that's coming about is a memory of a child or a young adult who had a really difficult time. So why on earth would I, as this removed person, make them feel bad about whatever it is their memory was conjuring up? Because I was trying my best in a world that just wasn't designed for me. And by making these memories a bit more abstract in this way, for me, it just encourages myself to offer myself forgiveness and more grace, because it was really difficult, and it's still really difficult as an autistic person living in a world that's designed for neurotypical people. And, we're going to have trauma as a result of that. So why should we beat ourselves up about it? Autistic people should never have to feel shame for being autistic. And I would never negatively judge anybody else who's reacted or responded to situations in the same way that I have in my childhood and in my younger years and even now. Because it just seems utterly ridiculous to be so harsh on myself when I'm just trying to respond to situations that present themselves in the only way that I know how. And sometimes it's cringy, but I remind myself that I have never gone out of my way to intentionally harm anybody in this life. So why am I being so harsh on myself? And as an example, I've had a memory that keeps popping up recently from when I was 9 years old, and I had had a broken leg, and the cast had been removed very recently, so I was still on crutches while I found the confidence to use my leg again. So I was sat in the school hall because it was a break time. So because my leg still felt very fragile, wasn't going out to the playgrounds or anything like that. So um, I remember I was practicing using my leg, and it was the first time I'd actually put any pressure on my leg. So it was the first time in using it since my leg was broken. And there was a teacher there, and she was so thrilled for me that I'd started learning how to walk again. But there was a girl who was also sat with me, and she was looking over and sort of laughing, and it was because there was a burn mark on the dress that I was wearing. I think for some reason it must have been a non-school uniform day because I wasn't in uniform, but there was like an iron burn on the back of the dress. And the reason that there was an iron burn on the back of my dress was that my mum was going through some really bad mental health stuff at that time. She was very, very unwell, and she'd obviously burnt this dress with the iron, but had put me in it anyway. And I felt utterly, utterly mortified, and it was just the whole duality of the moment. The teacher was pleased with my progress with my leg, but I was being brought down by this girl sort of laughing at my dress, and I did not know how to react to this moment at all. So I just didn't say anything. I was consumed with shame. I didn't know how to explain why my dress was burnt. I just felt that I couldn't say anything about my mum because I just couldn't, and I felt shame, and I just felt humiliated for a long time after it. And of course, there are thousands of other examples I can give you of feeling shame or embarrassment or cringe over scenarios that I've just been presented with. But if I'm to remove myself from this memory and look at it from another person's perspective, I see a young girl who was clearly autistic and struggling with regard to a social encounter. She was being made to feel both good and bad at the same time and didn't know how to respond. She didn't want to say anything negative about her own mum, so she chose to say nothing and just took on the shame and embarrassment for herself, which just makes me feel really sad. And if I try and analyse this memory from another person's perspective, I can't see anything to feel shame for in this scenario at all. And interestingly, I've learned recently about the concept of psychological distancing, which is what I've been doing for the last few years without actually realising it's a thing. But it's the practice of changing your perspective and maybe thinking about a problem from the perspective of another person and what they might do in order to find a solution. So it's often used in problem solving, and yeah, it's just so interesting that I've been doing a version of this for a few years now, and it has been really effective for me, hence why I wanted to share it today in case anybody else out there might find this technique or something similar useful. And I think also what's useful to remember when dealing with old memories or recent memories in respect of other people being involved with these scenarios, it is good to remember that very often people don't remember stuff at all that doesn't really involve them because they're so consumed by their own lives that the chances of them remembering stuff from perhaps decades ago is it's probably not as high as you'd think while you're being kind of consumed by horrible, embarrassing memories. And I know for me, because I relied on alcohol so much throughout my whole adult life, I'd often feel, mortified the next morning, and subsequent weeks that follows, over things that I'd said, because I wouldn't be able to remember what I'd said on these drunken nights out. And I'd feel absolute shame because I just would concoct all these imaginary scenarios where, I'd done stuff or said stuff that was really, really embarrassing. But very often when I would actually speak to people that I'd been out drinking with, they could barely remember the night too. So it is good to remember, and particularly in respect of rejection sensitivity that many of us deal with, I would just feel awful after these nights out and would never learn, because I'd go out the following weekend and do exactly the same thing, because I desperately wanted a social life at that time, because my ADHD was, far more significant then. So I was seeking novelty and seeking social interactions. So going out was important, but of course I needed a lot of alcohol to be able to enjoy these nights in any way, shape, or form, really. And binge drinking became a huge part of my personality because it's what gave me a personality. So I hope this video has been useful in some way. If you've also had to deal with a lot of embarrassing or, cringe moments in your life, because I know how tough it is. It can be, as I say, really all-consuming and deeply unpleasant. And it really is about finding strategies and ways forward in order to be kinder to yourself, isn't it? And another thing I want to mention is apologies if this video has a fair few jump cuts in it. I really struggle with traffic noise on this road where I live, so it inevitably means that I have to, use a few jump cuts in videos, and particularly this one, I imagine. So apologies for that. Thank you for watching. Give it a like if you got this far. Comments would always be appreciated, and I'd love to hear actually any topics that you think might be interesting for me to cover in future videos. So let me know down below, and I'll see you again soon.